being published in the fall under the title Glamorous Freak, How I Taught My Dress to Act by Jaded Ibis Press. It's kind of like I use the diary kind of as a means to explore different everyday sort of objects or things that you encounter, or that I encounter at least, like, you know, throughout sort of existence, like media objects like television or film or images or just kind of whatever comes along. So I'm just going to read a few entries from that. She went onto the street. She saw from this place. She looked at what abounded and made no comment. The wind swept away her quilted robe, and she looked very cold-bloodedly as she walked to the outskirts of the world. She did this, and she was not seen. No one asked her to stop or put a barrier in her way. She got there first. The road was rather long, and it was very narrow. The pavement had some holes in it, and through these hollows, different horns and different shapes rose from below. She went right on. Even when she was alone, she had electric lights for eyes. The places along the avenue, already familiar to her, kind of fog enclosed in glass. The same solemn, weary light falling on her, a swollen mist so close that she could attempt to embrace the air, but she stopped. She stopped as she passed a cat, spoke to her. Sometimes they speak to her, and sometimes she speaks to them. It is very strange. She stood and looked at the place where she used to live, and it was very overwhelming. She was no longer acquainted, a reason to start looking again. Otherwise, there would be repetition, and she would grow very bored. She would look at this furniture and accept the things that had been here for such a long time. That is what makes her keep walking. She does not really care for walking. She wanted something immediate to do, something that could happen very fast, and she started then. The house became more enclosed and more enclosed. Now it is even more enclosed. She does not walk completely around it since it has been enclosing. She cannot come out open anymore. The shadow she makes has several forms, and she gives it form. She is always trying to outrun it. That is another reason why she does not need to travel. She doesn't like to go this far. Night and day are very necessary for walking. The sun and the moon are very important. What good is the sea without salt? A very young girl walked in unannounced, surprised to discover a duchess atop a ladder. The duchess's half-parted lips stuck full of nails and a hammer in the duchess's hands. The household staff wreathed around the table, watching as the duchess hung a portrait squarely on the wall. So irksome, the duchess sighed, they don't know what they're doing, and climbed down, her great skirt bobbing, a tiny boat lost at sea. The very young girl is condemned and assisted to supply the daily needs of her own nature if she hasn't any coins. If she found a penny on the street, she might bend and pick it up. Such things are disfiguring to ladies. Somebody might look at her and laugh if she would rather eat a parrot cooked in pastry than give one her dignity. The labors of a very young girl should be cut into convenient pieces. Thereby she may return again to the woods and bring back baskets full of pine cones. Pine cones are tolerable to the company of ladies, though sticky. If she holds a pine cone in her hand, there's a chance it will bite her. She might have a feeling like pleasure. The small wound, the pomegranate seed in her palm, gives her leisure for a sigh. She won't have to make any ornaments today. She can forget the heroes of antiquity and drift instead into torpor, her substance soon changed to a paste of talcum and cologne. A very young girl needs an object for her petulance. She has nothing beyond the cares of her household, and she must see them done right. Everyone else is to be considered too stupid to know the difference. In this way, she wrangles for herself the governance of everything, and a right to cast away those duties indifferent to her. Deciding what to do first is a weary process that often ends in pains to preserve the velvet dress. She's expected to take this commitment. A rusty nail will keep the hydrangea blue. If she walks in and discovers the duchess has disappeared, she might climb up to the very top of the ladder, let the painting thud to the floor, and take the nail from the wall with her teeth. Much is to be said about utility. A very young girl must soon return to her own silvery fluid. There is no difficulty in distinguishing her. She's pinned at her waist a buckle polished to the highest order of reflection. The brass still warm and ecstatic from her effort is struggling through the window. Once outside, she might be permitted to wander a little, though the climate may be too intense to be long endured. If I look long enough, I'm confronted by her imperfections. What I'm looking for is a flaw, something not quite right, an offense against articulation, her limbs' position conveying a sense of unease, her arms weak, swinging in their sockets, a blemish on her cheek, the result of a headfirst fall from the bookcase where she rests supposedly supported by a wire stand. My impulse is to apologize for these mistakes, factory glitches she arrived with, things that occurred as a work of my own authorship. The most infinitesimal scratch transformed into an unstoppable gash serrating her body in two. This difference is ornamental. I can switch right now, distract myself by covering her mouth with my thumb, buffing her forehead with a piece of white paper or cloth. A notion I don't like. I don't want to take the risk of ruining her further, taking her apart piece by piece, knocking her over, sending her bits flying across the floor, where the cat will take up one opposable leg, feline and scissors grinding against it like an eraser head. The unfortunate problem of her plastic eyes under the couch looking in opposite directions, things I don't have control over but put me on edge. I can't stop noticing that her deficiencies disappear and reappear as I look toward and away, going over her by line. Things that take time to do. Measuring the distance between her eyes and the wedge of her nose is all I need to get there, counting the hairs in each plug on her scalp. It doesn't matter. There is always a resistance. The fabric of her dress will tear. She will dirty her feet, fall off balance, and break off her earlobe. Her eyelashes will fall out and litter the floor like pine needles. Her blush will wash away at my glance. I tried to take care of her. I tried to preserve her original state, but not as well as I thought. She sounds out each of her deformities in her own language, claiming them as her personal accomplishments. Composed but not confining, a blank space where her lipstick should be, a tiny hole at the back of her knee, the broken string inside her head, harmonies that are dear to her. She will substitute frizzy hair and a crack behind for glamour, creating a correspondence between beauty and irregularity that I can put a value to. Her approach is brutal, simple. She is sure of herself, opening and closing her eyes as a trigger for serenity.